Hi, Alicia. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, it's great to be here.
How are you today?
Good. I am coming off a busy work week and I'm glad it's Friday, so ready for the holiday weekend for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. So you are a liberation coach trauma specialist,
Mhm.
and I am wondering how you got into that.
Yeah, so it's long story short, I went through a lot of my own trauma in life. Like my soul chose a very, very adverse path in childhood. And so that led me into pursuing mental health. And so for the first 15 years of my career, I really dove into being a trauma therapist and learning all about how to help people heal the things that have happened to them, like in childhood or adverse experiences, in adulthood. And I really quickly learned that if I'm going to be in the mental health field, like I have to quickly learn how to work with this or I'm going to burn out. And so from there and working with agencies and like going through that route of corporate America and all the things that we do at the beginning of our career, I opened my own private practice and then have been doing that. So private practice for 9 years and then like transitioned into life coaching to really be able to do what I want without having anyone like state regulations, certain things like that, requirements over me. And so I really took all the things that I've learned and how to work with trauma and brought it into my coaching practice.
Okay, awesome. What would you say are some of the differences, like the state would regulate, that you can do with coaching that you cannot do with therapy?
So in New York State, mental health is really strict. There's in other states like Florida, California, things like that, that they don't regulate as much, but it's very much there's a lot of red tape around discussing spirituality, and you're not allowed to, give advice or put impressions on people or make suggestions. Therapists are supposed to take a very neutral stance and they are not able to disclose personal information about themselves. They're not really able to, in my opinion, um, be completely transparent and authentic in a therapeutic relationship. And so I obviously didn't like those parameters. And spirituality is a huge component in how I work with people, not only through how I healed myself, but also through how I help people, understand how to navigate the experiences that they have in their life. And so I just decided that, for liability reasons and not really wanting like just that overlay, on me, that I would do my own thing.
That makes sense. So I've
Awesome.
had one experience with therapy after a car accident, and my therapist basically didn't want to talk about childhood and kind of wanted to gloss over everything very quickly and get me moving on and go towards things like weight and things that I wasn't really, even thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see how when you can't bring that personal stuff, like your own experiences in, and really authentically connect with the person that you're talking with, it's really hard to, I could see myself maybe doing that. Because have you read The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't had that one.
So I believe she's a therapist for therapists. And one of the things that she described was kind of what was going on with my therapist, which was she wanted, I wish I could remember the details, but she basically could see, she would compliment me on how much I was grasping and applying the information, and then needing to project kind of her success with me onto me. Like, you're good to go. Like, you're all set, ready, set, go. And that's something I could, she talks about the things that we have as therapists or coaches or practitioners, where we project that stuff onto our clients or patients, not seeing it, not recognizing it. Did you ever go to therapy before you became a practitioner?
Sort of. It was a very similar experience to yours. They call that transference, and they call that, what you're describing is essentially transference. And so all therapists are really encouraged to do their inner work and to do their own therapy, but some don't. And my first experience was kind of similar to yours, where, something got disclosed to a boyfriend that I didn't want him to tell anybody. He told my mother. My mother forced me to go into therapy in my 20s. I kind of like dumped all this stuff onto the therapist about my childhood and all the traumatic things that I went through. She labeled me as codependent, gave me a book to do inner child work, saw me for 8 sessions and said, "I think our work here is done." And I just felt really exposed and ripped open with no support after that. And so I was in my undergrad at that point and was really deep into my own, depression symptoms, like things like that. But, even though I would go to like the counseling center in my college, I just never felt comfortable again to talk about what really happened to me, because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be supported. And I think, it's not uncommon that I hear horror stories like that from people that come into my office around, being traumatized from their experience with their counselor.
Yeah, I could see how it almost like invalidated your pain, right? Like, you're being dramatic. The same thing that probably the person who created the trauma did to us. You're being dramatic. You're blowing this out of proportion. You're making this up, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't that. Like, she was very supportive in that it did happen, but what she didn't do well was like, she needed to, see other people. So she discharged me really prematurely. It was like, I think that we're done here, and I gave you what you needed to work on. Now go work on it on my own. So she was very validating, and she exposed a lot to me, but there was no follow through with helping me through it. Which, again, is really damaging.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, when you go to some type of a clinic or an agency and there's a high demand on therapists, they can't, they don't have the continuity of care to be able to see people fully through, to get them to the other side of what they're working on. They see way too many people, and they're often very burnt out. And it's a huge disservice to, humanity, and I would say.
Yeah, it's like that profit first mentality that, the big corporations have, or the whatever legal structure they have, but always the bottom line, get your numbers in.
Exactly.
Burn them and churn them. Yeah, just so how do you feel like, how would you say that you bring spirituality into kind of, and having the freedom of your own practice to better support your clients, to kind of feel out what they need?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as you start to evolve and as you start to grow and ascend in your own concept of yourself and spirituality, it's almost as if you attract more of those people into your life. And so since I've been on that path, it's, I would say that it's not an accident that everybody that comes into my practice already has that awareness, and that there is their higher self, there is the soul, there is, a reason that they are experiencing the things that they're experiencing, that they need to resolve and that they need to go through. And that essentially there is like, source, God, universe, whatever language you want to put onto that, there's something else, out there that is supporting them, guiding them, helping them through their pain. And I really, work diligently to help them see what they're dealing with from a higher perspective, and how to really heal. the things that are coming up in them, right? Because it's essentially their higher self, their soul that's calling these experiences in so that they can, alchemize it and transmute it and learn from it so the patterns discontinue and stop repeating, and they can really find their own worth and their own value in, who they are as spirit having a human experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's what I'm hoping to kind of teach my kids going forward, because I was raised really religious, and yet, I mean, I think my relationship with God or spirit was God at that time, prioritized. Yet my parents still framed themselves as gods, like to be that we should be unconditionally obedient, say, jump and just do it immediately, whatever that expression is. But to try to teach my kids, which I need to do a lot more of, that I'm just a human. All the mistakes I'm making don't mean anything about who you are and what your worth is, and that you have the God, the goddess, the universe, whatever you want to believe in, whatever resonates for you, to rely on as your source, not anything, any human thing, any 3D thing.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what we're all working through as parents right now, is to unwind and unprogram, those conditions and things that we went through. And that's really what it's all about. It's never too late to introduce new concepts. I go through that with my son all the time, around when he's having difficult experiences, really trying to extract, the lessons from that, and, why he chose me as his mom, or why he chose his dad as his dad, and some patterns and some wounding there that needs to be corrected that he's not going to understand right now as a 9-year-old, but that I'm here to help him work through that as he goes through life and works through, the hurts and the pains that culture, society, parents, put on him. It's not, we didn't come into the hardest planet in the galaxy to not work through stuff, to not go through stuff. And I always reinforce that in him too, is that, you're here for a purpose. You are an infinite being. You are loved. You're valued. You're so important. And we'll see if those seeds, take root. But he'll have to go through the matrix just like every single one of us do.
Yeah. And that's another thing, the releasing the attachment to trying to make their life perfect or shield them from all of the stuff. Obviously, we can't do that, or they won't learn anything.
Exactly. It's hard to watch him go through it. Like my son, actually, we just had a conversation last night because he came home from a weekend at his dad's, and he's, a boy, and he does not like to talk about feelings, and he doesn't like to feel feelings. And so as a mom, it's hard to witness those things getting bottled up in his nervous system, because I know that they're going to come back and they're going to come back and they're going to repeat if you don't clear it. And, I just have to trust and not push. And I educate him as much as I can about when you suppress things and you don't feel the uncomfortable feelings, they could resurface later. So I just do my best at informing him and not pushing him, because, he's where he's at, and he's his own little infinite divine person that I get the joy and struggle of raising.
Yeah, that's the fun thing. Like all of my stuff, all of my mistakes that my parents made, I just watched myself just dump that on my kids, and just like, oh my God, this is not happening right now. So that's been a lot of fun.
I bet. Absolutely. We do not get to escape that process.
I think parents to be maybe don't quite realize that that's coming their way, because people will talk about like, oh, parenting's hard. I think for me, that's the hardest part, is just becoming that person who I was so angry at. And, it's like, Buckle up, guys.
Yeah. And I like to think that we are a little bit more consciously aware. When I fall back into the old program, as I call it, or I go unconscious and that stuff comes out, whether I like yell or scold or, have a reaction that I'm not proud of, what I've learned is it's not necessarily about that reaction. It's about the repair and the ownership, of, hey, I didn't handle that really well. I was overwhelmed. I shouldn't have, I lost my cool and I'm not perfect. And if I could do it over, this is what I would have done differently. Is there anything that you would have done differently? From your mind, what happened and what is the opportunity for growth here that we both can take into consideration versus that old style of parenting of I'm the adult and you're the child. And the reason that this happened was because of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what we're trying to move away from, or at least I am as a mom and as a person. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily agree with that style, but that's my relationship that I have with my child, and I don't have to do it anybody else's way.
Right. Would you say that for your son, not wanting to talk about his feelings, I mean, not that there's a definitive answer, but do you feel like it's more nature or nurture or combination?
I would say both. My son specifically had a really difficult, challenging first 5 years of his life. And so there's not many children in this world that get to escape birth trauma. And so he had a pretty traumatic birth. And what I know from trauma and doing a lot of early child studying of that and how that can affect the brain and the nervous system, it essentially teaches you to come out of the wound like not trusting and feeling unsettled. He was incredibly colicky. He was a really, really unsettled baby child. And also being a new mom and experiencing my own trauma of all of that, it just feels very, very unregulated. And so he also went through a lot, coming and being born into separate homes and, just a lot for just a little tiny human being coming into this world. And so I feel like he, has a lot of trauma and unresolved stuff in his nervous system already from the first 5 years of his life, which nobody wants to acknowledge or feel, right? So it's different when you have a child who comes into a home where there is a lot of, safety in parents, and there's not a lot of transition, and there's a lot of consistency, and there's a lot of stability. Children that grew up in that type of an environment and that setting have a much easier time expressing and feeling safe in their body to feel what they're feeling. That was not my child's circumstance, and I know that. And so I'm also prepared to help him work through that as he continues to grow.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of I kind of want to circle back to the birth trauma because I don't know a whole lot about that. But my experience with when my daughter was born, it was just the terror of how tiny that person is. She also had a very traumatic birth. The umbilical cord was around her legs, so she wouldn't drop, and they were trying to induce me for 3 days. So ended up having C-sections for both of my kids. But she ended up in the NICU because her lungs filled with fluid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a rough baby, hard time sleeping. And for me, I couldn't stand not being able to sleep, like not being able to get the rest. And when I brought her home, it was almost like I had a lot of experience with like watching my nieces and nephews and kind of nannying for them. So my husband at the time just kind of was looking at me like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And all of that pressure, it was like, I need you to take over, and I need to be alone, and I need to recenter myself. And none of that was happening.
Absolutely.
And yeah, just having to kind of force that onto him so that I didn't lose it with a newborn baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very real. Like essentially, like, your baby is in survival mode and you're in complete survival mode. Like it is very traumatic for both. And what we know now is like we're learning to work through that. And in the fit for service community, there's so much around, conscious parenting and really, preventing birth trauma and those types of things and how to self-soothe that. But we are doing a huge disservice in our society with the way that these children are being birthed into the world. I, at the time when I had my son, certainly wasn't as aware of all of that as I am now. I learned more about it as I obviously continued to study and read books and grow in my profession and personally. But you just don't know what you just don't know. And you're like, well, this is just what people do. We have babies in hospitals, they get circumcised right away. Yeah, you can vaccinate them. That's just what we do in society, right? Like you just don't know because you're just fed this information and you're not aware of the other more holistic and natural options that are out there and available.
Yeah, I think we also kind of shame people who do home births, have a stigma about, oh, they're crazy. Think of all the things that could go wrong. And in my case, yeah, if I had to try to do that, we would have been dead. But the vast majority of people are going to have a really normal, healthy birth. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little more about what those options are.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. And I think that, yes, there's always risk. There absolutely is. And I can't say that I would tell somebody to go one way or another. I think it's a very, if your intuition is prompting you to have a child in a hospital, great. But there's ways that we can prevent that trauma from being worse for that child, like right skin to skin. And like before you cut the umbilical cord, like let the baby rest. The problem is like your doctor has 5 other births to give in that moment and like needs to get it over quickly. And so it's like a very rushed process. And so I encourage every single woman out there to find a doctor who is on the same page with how they want to birth their baby into this world. Now we know that there are, birth doulas or ayahuasca birth doulas. We have one in our community that's amazing, that will help the mother connect with the baby and plan the birth and how the child wants to come into this world, through the plant medicine ceremony. There's lots of different ways to prevent that from happening if somebody is really open and, wants to do alternative methods. I think that there's absolutely ways to do that, but to, again, to not shame or judge anybody that wants to do, the traditional, we'll call it, way. But I'm constantly having conversations with my clients who are giving birth around how to prevent that trauma or attachment wounds, right? So when the baby is ripped right away from us, it creates a significant attachment wound, where they can develop like an anxious attachment, or they can develop an insecure attachment within themselves or with their mother. Like it comes about like not only not trusting like other people, but not trusting self. Like there's a significant insecure or wounded attachment style when babies are ripped away right away. It's incredibly traumatic for the psyche and the brain. So the child comes into the world wanting to protect and disconnect because it doesn't feel safe. And
are there any other types of wounds that also come from birth trauma? This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yeah, it's a lot. Interestingly enough, the way that we feel about ourselves as adults is formed within the first 5 years of our lives. And in the first 5 years of our lives, we are very sensory. We don't have our brain fully developed. And so a lot of the imprinting and the experiences that happen in the stages of development, if there's trauma at certain stages, like let's just say, mother was in the hospital for the first 3 months of the child's life, and wasn't able to like be home with the child, like we can develop a codependent behavior pattern where we like become super codependent and like needing adults and needing love and needing that external validation to feel safe and secure, to feel loved. And that's why we attract partners in that way. Or if the third stage of development between the ages like 3 to 5 is that counterdependent stage. And that's where we see children like want to be like, no, I could do it myself, me, right? But if there's trauma at that stage, then they can grow up stuck in that behavior pattern of like pushing away love or pushing away from people or being hyper independent because they don't trust that they're going to get their needs met. So, you know, it's important, like as an adult, to really kind of look at how what you're going through now and the patterns that you have in your life may be from things that are unresolved from when you were really young.
Yeah. How do you think that nursing comes into that?
I think that a lot of people are taught to feel shame around nursing or not nursing. And I think that, you know, I'm not the expert in that area. And so I'll just say, like, I haven't studied nursing or not nursing, but I do believe that it's an attachment bond, right? So when a child gets to nurse off mom, there is a significant attachment that can be formed, or like a sense of safety and security and bonding that is really good for the child. And I think that it's more about that feeling and sense of safety, and obviously the nutrients and things like that. But what we do know now is like a lot of mothers have trouble producing milk and have trouble, like, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. And so a lot of mothers will supplement with formula. And it's, you know, to me, when it comes to trauma, it's about the bond, right? It's about like helping the brain develop psychologically and emotionally as much as it's about helping the body develop nutritionally. And so it's really about the safety and security of the environment. You know, and if for me, nursing was traumatic. Like it was, you know, he wouldn't latch. He had like something, like I didn't know it at the time, but like he couldn't latch. And it was like all this, you know, stress in my body that a child picks up on, right? Because a child only knows how to regulate through your nervous system as a mother. So if you're trying to nurse in a stressed out state, like that's not good for either one of you. We don't want to force that or encourage that. Unfortunately, I didn't know better at that time for me. So, you know, it was like, what's wrong with me that I can't get my child to do this? You know, and so I had to switch to formula, which certainly had its own problems, but I was a much more relaxed, calm mom, which I think is way more important for a baby than whether he nurses or not, or he or she nurses or not. You know, because children only know how to regulate their nervous system when they're young through you regulating yours. So the more healed and clear you feel in yourself and calm you feel in your body, the better off your child is going to be.
Yeah, that is so something I kind of, when I started healing, I had already had my 2 kids and I was like, dang it, I wish I had done this before because I see, you know.
I know. And, you know, I think I agree. And I don't ever want anybody to feel bad about that, because the truth is that your children chose you exactly the way that you are. They chose you, you know, they chose to come through you, and they chose this life to be exactly what it was. And I constantly have to remind myself that as a mom, is if, you know, if he wanted a perfect mom with a perfect, you know, untraumatized nervous system, he wouldn't have came through me. So now we're just left to figure out how to navigate that as we become aware and as we become conscious, and as we start to do our own inner work.
Yeah, and how many perfect untraumatized parents are there? I mean, when you talked about children who come into a home where there's a lot of stability, and I have no idea if there's any numbers around that, but I doubt there's that many.
Very, very rare. I have hope that we are working back to that, and that's what, like, we're, you know, we're waking up. new things and really, how to change a lot that's going on from many, many different aspects of society. And I do have hope that in, maybe in our time, maybe not, that we'll see different ways and different methods and, more education around these types of things.
Yeah. I also wonder, back to the nursing thing, if difficulty producing milk has a lot to do with stress and trauma that's been held in the body, and maybe around whether or not you nursed or not. But maybe one of the ways to bond with your child, if you can't, would be just that skin to skin contact as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so important. One of the things that I disagree with as far as society goes is, well, actually two things really. One, putting a baby in their crib and letting them cry themselves to sleep because they need to learn how to self-soothe is a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion. Sorry.
I agree.
But that creates so much trauma around, there's adults don't know how to self-soothe. How the heck is a baby going to know how to self-soothe? You know what I mean? Like, let's be honest here. Like, a child self-soothes through the mother, and the only reason that the child attaches to the father is through the mom, because of like that safe sense of security. I mean, and obviously the father can do that if there is like the couple is together and like the father is speaking and the baby gets to hear the voice and like those types of things. But when it comes to being like in this 3D and that sense of separation, right? So you're essentially like ripped away from source, ripped away from God, ripped away from whatever, energetic source that you came from, and you're left to deal with two parents that you are now associating with this feeling of like being ripped away from love. You only know how to get that through the parent. And so it's really just about that bond. And when you leave a child in a crib to cry, it creates such an abandonment wound, like such a strong feeling of separation that they have to they're trying to resolve and heal in relationships as adults. And so that's like one of the things that I definitely don't agree with. And the other thing is like, not letting your child sleep with you, or like, the child wants to be around you and in your presence and in your energy as much as possible. And we are taught, like, put them in the crib right away, like they need to separate from mom as quickly as possible. And it really creates a lot of attachment wounds. It's like, if a child wants to crawl into bed and like come and get comforted by you, let that child do that. They don't know how to comfort themselves. That's our job, to teach them how to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it causes so much shame and it causes so much pain to be like, get away from me. You're not allowed to be near me when you're needing me. Right? Like, what a message does that create for a little brain that's not even fully developed and has no life experience yet? And again, I do shame parents that do this, because I certainly did it that way. I did. I would go back and do it over if I could. But I just think that there's things that we're being taught that are from very, very old programming, where we didn't have the research that we have today, and we didn't have the awareness and knowledge that we do now, that we need to take into consideration.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, with my daughter, we were kind of, actually, especially because I was on public assistance at the time, and that's a whole different level of experience. You're treated like you are a moron and you have no education. And I was college educated, and they spoke to me in very simple language, and the way they talked to me was just silly and ridiculous. So I saw the way that people who are in that system deal with it. And one of the things that they did was, you've seen those billboards. What is it with the co-sleeping, that you're going to roll over and suffocate your baby? So my daughter just was not going to tolerate sleeping in her crib by herself. It wasn't happening. And we tried it. Her grandma, my ex's mom, stayed with us for a week and tried to sleep train her, I guess is what it was. And when she left, I was like, I am done with this. I need to sleep. I'm bringing her in my bed and she's sleeping with me. And then her dad rolled over on her and I felt her struggling, luckily. And I shoved him off. That pissed me off. Didn't do well for our relationship going forward. But so instead of just having her down on the bed, I just put that changing pad and put her on top of that so we couldn't roll over on her. And I just had my hand on her and that was okay. That worked for as long as it needed to.
They're screaming for help, right? Like, and I think it's so interesting. Like every mother knows that a baby has different cries for different needs, right?
Yeah.
We intuitively know when our child needs to get changed or when they're hungry or when they're tired. Like we know that because as a lot of people may not know this, but when you are the child's growing in utero, the DNA gets exchanged between the mom and the child, right? And so you get essentially a strand, like the DNA bond is in you, right? So there's a reason that mother has an intuition of what that child needs. And yet every single person outside of that child wants to tell you what that child needs and how to raise it. It's like,
right.
I know what my baby needs. And it took me so long to trust that and like let the outside world go and be like, because you start to think that you're doing something wrong. And then it just creates more stress. It's like, the first, I think it was probably about, my son was like 3 months old. And I finally realized like, he doesn't like to be held. He does not want to be held. He wants to be on his ground. He wants to do his own thing. He doesn't want to be like, he wants to do his own thing. I was like, oh, okay. So you mean I'm not supposed to rock him to sleep and wonder why he's struggling while I'm rocking him? Just silly things like that you only know as a mom by being around your baby so much, right? And so the biggest thing is like, trust your intuition, trust your inner knowing. It's so important. And to like, you knew that she needed to be with you, you knew that. It's like, all right, like, let's honor more of that. Let's support one another instead of making you feel like we're doing something wrong here.
Yeah, there's so much mom shaming. And then there's, when you're getting support from a family member that's there trying to help you, you feel like you have to take their advice or you have to honor. But setting a healthy boundary is probably one of the most important times to set one.
It's so true. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't need you to come over and help with the baby. I need you to make me food. I need you to do my laundry. I need you to clean my house. I need you to let me shower. I got the baby.
Yeah, totally. Because the baby stage is the best. I mean, for me, I love a little baby and just to hold. Yeah, they're so great.
So true. Yeah, I'm like eating pickles and yogurt. Like that's about all I can get in right now. I need someone to make me a meal.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. So then in adulthood, so if you are, what are some of the modalities you use in coaching versus therapy?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't separate them anymore. I've come to the point where I am not going to be like, this is therapy, this is coaching. Like I don't see a lot of separate. Well, for me, for how I work and the expertise that I have, I'm not going to not go into the past with one of my coaching clients. I'm just not. In order for me to effectively be able to know how to help somebody and what is coming up within them in present day, I need to know their history and what unmet needs and wounds are there. And so I don't know if you want to call me like a theracoach, but like I combine the both and I, do that in a way that works really well. As far as like, we're going to go in the past, I'm going to let you, like, we're going to resolve some of that stuff. And we're also going to talk about like the future and your higher self and like your life purpose and how to work through that pain to like get you on that path that your soul is calling you to be on. And so at first, when I like got my certification in coaching, it was like, well, you got to do it this way. In order to be called like a certified coach, you can't talk about the past with people. And I was like, yeah, but that's my whole area of expertise. And so I've learned to really combine that. and to not feel like they need to be separate in order to really help somebody. But there are a lot of, therapists out there that aren't trained to coach, and there's a lot of coaches out there that aren't trained to do deeper work. So for me personally, I have the expertise in both. So I combine them freely because I have the ability to do that.
And is breath work one of the things, because I thought I saw on your Instagram that you do?
Yeah. So I because of my training and all of the things that I've done to really help people work through their trauma, I created a very specific program that combines a lot of my modalities that I am trained in for therapy and coaching. So I use internal family systems work, where we talk about your internal parts of your personality and parts that get stuck in certain time frames of your life, along with like EMDR and an eye movement therapy to resolve and clear out and heal some of that childhood wounding, or things where your like psyche is really stuck and you can't seem to get through it, along with the somatic breath work and working with the body and the nervous system to heal and clear out that emotional pain. So it's really kind of a full gamut of like tools to really help people like kind of heal and clear out the past, but also to be able to realign and embody how they want to feel. I don't even want to say in the future, but like present day. It's like if you can start to clear out some of that stuff, to be able to think clearly, to be able to feel at peace, to be able to start to like love your life and feel really alive, then the future just starts to manifest and unfold in front of you, because that's the path, right?
So you've talked about, yeah. You've talked about how you are guiding people toward higher self, towards soul calling, toward feeling really alive. I hear frequently that coaches and therapists are telling their clients, you're normal, and trying to keep them kind of in their life, trying to almost like perpetuating what society has taught. You're doing this practical job and this practical thing, and you need to keep doing that. And we're going to approach your healing with the aim of keeping you in that box that you're in, instead of what do you really want?
Yeah. That's what I was like, oh, hell no. Like, so that's why I'm a liberation coach, right? Because I help people break out of the box and to break out of the programming and the expectation that has been put on them, so that they can really feel like they're following the inner call of their soul, right? If that is where they want to be, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they feel really alive doing, great. But if you're doing it because, you were taught that that's what you have to do, or that's what's expected of you from your family or from even your husband, then your soul and your higher self is eventually going to start to send you messages to break you down psychologically, because that's not where you're supposed to be. That's not what's making you feel alive. If you don't feel joy and peace and fun and like alive, then you're in the box. Something's not, cleared, and you're trying to, grind it through, most likely because you don't want to disrupt your life. You don't want to upset people. You don't want things to change. And then you feel like something's not right with you because you're not happy. Right. And that's what the mind will do, is it will start to create the story around, why am I not happy anymore? Why don't I want to be in this job anymore? Why can't I be happy in this job? Why can't I be happy in this relationship? He's a great guy, or, this is a great person, but they won't really let me do what I want to do with my life. And I feel like I'm being controlled, and I feel like they don't value me, and we can't communicate. And like, right. So all this stuff starts to happen where we think that we're supposed to be happy because that's what society says, go to college, get a job, get married, have a baby, and buy a house with a white picket fence, and that's all you're supposed to do in life. Like, that's what we're trained to do. If we're not happy with that, then something must be wrong with us.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So it's like, let's break through that stuff and figure out what really is going to make you feel great about your life. That you
Yes.
can enjoy it and you can find like peace and fun. And don't like, there's no such thing as perfect and there's no such thing as like peaceful forever. But there is an inner sense of knowing that, I'm okay and I'm happy and I feel like I'm contributing and I can enjoy the present moment with wherever I'm at and whoever's in front of me.
Yeah, we're always trying to, we talk about enjoying the present moment, and so many people are like, okay, what does that mean? And it's what you're describing. It's when you stop living your life through a lens of obligation, when you're no longer shaming yourself for not wanting all those obligations, all of a sudden, oh, wow, breathing does feel good. Oh, I am tasting my coffee. Look at that beautiful flower. Like all of a sudden, your daily life becomes so much less of a grind, and the world opens up to you. Possibilities open. You stop seeing, you're stuck in this body and this pattern when you're living in that shame and that restrictive, that it's hard to even like making a huge pattern interrupt is what's gonna, I mean, sometimes like for me, if I move a rug out of my bedroom and into my bathroom, I'm like, oh, I have a whole new perspective on what my day can be. Like it can be a little thing.
It's so true, and it's hard to know what you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Right. Like I had a client, I just put her through a breathwork session last week. And I met with her today, and this crazy awesome thing happened to her during her breathwork session. But follow up this week, she was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time in my life where I feel okay being completely independent and not feeling like I need to be in a relationship to be happy. She's like, I feel like I am finally okay just being with myself. And I was like, that's why I do what I do, right? That's the medicine. But like, you don't know it, like, because the psyche or the mind is saying, I need this thing to make me feel happy. I need this thing to make me feel complete. I need this relationship or this person to love me or this person to choose me in order to be okay. And you don't even know that you're on that train until you get off of it.
Right. Right. We're coming up on time, but how do people work with you and find you?
Yeah, so super simple. Just AliciaKayCoaching.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. You can always find me on social media, and you can always book a free consultation call with me to see how I can help you liberate your authentic self and feel fully, alive and free in the moment with where you're at right now. I offer a really intensive 6-month program that involves individual coaching sessions, breathwork sessions, where we do a lot of that internal family systems work. We do a lot of that, emotional healing work along with the breathwork. And you get me. You get session notes. You get homework. You get journaling prompts. You get meditations. You get a really full package to really clear out a lot of the old and really align with how you want to feel like in the new. So
amazing. All right. Thank you so much. Great getting to talk with you.
You too. Thanks for having me on. This was wonderful.
Aren't you hosting a river rafting trip with Melanie?
I am. Yeah. So if anybody is interested in floating with me for 4 days down the Utah River, that is at the end of July, where we're going to be doing lots of connecting with Mother Earth, sound healing. We're going to be doing a little bit of workshops, but it's going to be such a restorative journey to really reconnect with that inner goddess and that sense of spirit within, and fully just connect as women and just kind of decompress from the stress of life. So that is actually at melaniejoyspeaks.com. You can find that river rafting retreat there, or you can also find that on my social media, Instagram at Alicia Kay Coaching.
Yeah, and Melanie did highlight that it is all about receiving for the women, not cooking, setting up your own camp, right? You
We
get
do
kind of,
nothing. We do nothing. We don't have to do any of it. The
yeah,
guides do it all for us. It's literally just
that sounds magic.
Just show up with no makeup.
Yes.
Yeah,
I plan to go to the next one. I can't go to this one, but definitely I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I would love it. I'm a little sad that I can't make it to the Fit for Service Summit, but I feel like my soul is calling me to unwind and detach on the river.
I think both of those are a full fuck yes. It's hard when you have more than one.
Yes, exactly. Oh, this is great. Well, it's been wonderful getting to know you, and I can't wait to see you.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.